Hey guys, got a chance to see Furious 7 a little early this week, and holy crap, it's mostly exactly what you thought it was going to be. The most fascinating thing to me about the Fast and Furious franchise is how they've kept topping themselves. You know, it's like every installment is just bigger and crazier and more badass than the one before it. And your ability to believe what is actually happening on screen is stretched just a little farther with every one of these movies. And to consistently be like just entertaining is super impressive to me. These movies have never offered much more than like, holy shit, did you see what they just did with those cars? And that's great. I love that. In fact, my only beef with the franchise comes when they start taking themselves a little too seriously and start trying to do a little too much story. I don't care about any of that, you know? I show up for the fast cars and the things that go boom, and that's what I want. And for the most part, that's what the Fast and Furious franchise has always delivered. They show up, they do their thing, they leave, we clap, we wait for the next one to come out. That's how it works. Now, obviously with Furious 7, they do have to deal with the real-life tragedy of Paul Walker's death, and they do it very gracefully. It's actually a very touching thing that they do for Paul Walker in this movie. So, all that to say, Furious 7 is a very worthy entry into the franchise. It does all of those things that I talked about. It does them pretty well. If you're a fan of the franchise, you're gonna go see it no matter what I say. You've probably already bought your tickets. Now, for those of you that are somewhere on the fence about Fast and the Furious movies, I'll say this. The high watermark of this film is, of course, the sequence where they parachute in their cars out of a plane onto a narrow mountain road in Azerbaijan. It's perfect. Utterly insane, clearly impossible, but there's still some tiny little shred of plausibility about the scene that maybe that could actually work, and that is where my Fast and Furious movies need to live. And this sequence is the perfect example of it. I love the sequence in Rio where they're dragging a safe behind the two cars and they're like pinballing across the entire Rio Police Department. I love it in the 6th movie where they drive a car through the nose of a plane that is currently exploding. That's great, that's perfect. It's heightened to the point where it's the most ridiculous while still salvaging that tiny little shred of believability. Like in movie physics, I believe that that is possible. Where Furious 7 loses me just a little bit is when they turn it into a superhero movie. I don't want to say anything too specific because I don't want to spoil anything for you, but Furious 7 spends a lot of time in that sweet spot that I'm talking about, but then towards the end, it turns into something else entirely. The entire last climactic action sequence of Furious 7, instead of feeling like it's the Fast and Furious franchise stepping up its own game, it feels more like a diet version of the destruction that we saw in movies like Avengers or Man of Steel. And look, ultimately, it didn't really bother me that much. Like I said, it spends a lot of time in that great Fast and Furious sweet spot, but it was a little disappointing. It seemed like they were, if you'll pardon the pun, seemed like they were taking another franchise's car out for a spin. And I don't even want to get into the plot of the movie because the plot gets real confused, but we're not there for the plot. There's like 4 bad guys, they all want different things. To be honest, I'm not sure what was going on there. But again, that's not why we go to these movies. These movies are about cars flying out of planes and doing ridiculous things. And Furious 7 has plenty of that. You're gonna love this movie. If you've been excited about this movie, you're gonna love it. So, if you check out Furious 7 this weekend, let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. Click like and subscribe, and come back next time for more movie news on CineFix Now.